Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a quiet Romanian town in the summer of 1941. Families waking up to a Sunday morning. Men, women, children gathering in their homes, in the markets, in the streets. But this was no ordinary morning. This was the day that fear itself came knocking. The Romanian government, aligned with Nazi Germany, had spread lies that Jews living in the town of Iași were traitors, spies, enemies of the nation. The air was thick with rumors, suspicion, and hate, carefully planted and inflamed. And then it began. Soldiers marched into the Jewish quarter, not as protectors, but as executioners. Doors were kicked down, men dragged into the streets. Women screamed, clutching their children. Some begged for mercy. Others stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. Neighbors who had lived side by side for generations suddenly looked at each other with fear and betrayal. The order was brutal and simple: gather the Jews, march them to the river. So they were herded like cattle through the streets they had once called home. The elderly stumbling, the young crying, mothers whispering to their children to stay quiet, even though silence could not save them. At the edge of the river, they were forced to line up. A place where water should have been a source of life now became a graveyard. Machine guns opened fire. Men, women, children, entire families torn apart in seconds. The river ran red that day. Bodies fell into the water, others piled on the banks. Cries for help faded into silence. The people of Iași watched in horror, some from windows, others forced to participate. But it did not end there. Those who were not killed at the river were crammed into what came to be known as the death trains. Boxcars so overcrowded that people could barely move. Sealed shut in the sweltering summer heat, with no water, no food, and no air to breathe. For days, the train sat still or crept slowly across the countryside. Inside, thousands of men, women, and children suffocated, their final hours spent in agony. By the time the doors were opened, most of them were already gone. The stench of death poured out into the open air. In just a few days, over 13,000 Jews were murdered in Iași, one of the darkest pogroms in modern history. And yet, the world outside barely noticed. The war was raging, atrocities piling up across Europe. But for the survivors, the memory of that week never faded. The empty chairs at dinner tables, the toys left behind by children who never returned, the bricked-up houses that once held laughter, now silent. Today, when historians speak of the Holocaust, the Iași pogrom is remembered as a warning of how quickly hatred can turn ordinary neighbors into executioners, and how lies spread by those in power can justify the unthinkable. It is not just a story of death. It is a story of how fragile humanity can be, and how easily it can be shattered when prejudice is allowed to rule. If you walk through Iași now, the streets seem quiet, the river flows peacefully. But for those who know the history, every step feels heavy, because beneath that silence lies the echo of screams and the weight of thousands of lives stolen in a matter of days. This is the tragedy of Iași, a story that demands we remember, not just to mourn, but to remind ourselves of what can happen when hate is left unchecked. Because behind every number, every statistic, was a man, a woman, a child who deserved to live.